All right, good. Good.
Okay, we can probably get, Jerry, do you have the agenda?
I do.
Wonderful. Okay, and we'll do, we are going to call this meeting to order. We have 4 members, so it makes a quorum. And as people join, we can welcome them. So I'm gonna, I announced a quorum. Now let's do introductions, and we could start with Sarah.
Sarah Collard, Siskiyou County.
Okay, and Barbara.
Hi, Barbara Longo, Lansing County.
Jerry.
Jerry Robertson, representing Del Norte County.
Wonderful, welcome. We also have Barry Tippin.
Afternoon.
Hi. And are there any introductions here? Go around the room.
Michelle Weidman from Shasta Scout. Nicole Smith, City of Reading.
Kristen Schrader, Shasta County Advisory.
Lauren McDuffie, City of Reading.
Okay, and are there any guests in any of your rooms where you're at? Okay, and we also have Teddy Pierce from Decipher HMIS. Okay.
Here.
All right, so the first item is public comments. Members of the public will have the opportunity to address the board on any issue within the jurisdiction of the board. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Are there any public comments? Okay. The first item is the action item, and it's what we're here about today, which is really almost the sole reason, is to approve the collaborative application fiscal year 2023 for submission to HUD, which was an attachment in 6 parts. But and then Teddy is going to walk us through it. We have a PowerPoint, a very short 4-page PowerPoint, and then she's going to walk us through. I sent you a change to the Housing Partners 2. What Teddy's also going to explain is right after I sent that, because I was trying to be diligent, there was one more change. So she's going to share with us and explain the difference between the first, second, and third. And then we'll go through how we need to approve. We actually need to break out the components on how they're supposed to be approved. So we'll work. Teddy's going to explain all that to us. All right, Teddy.
You're ready to go. So let me see if I can share. Oh, let's see. Nicole, yeah, I'm going to need to be undisabled.
They'll let you in.
There we go. Okay. All right, everybody. Well, what I thought I would do, just as a matter of course for today, is do this very brief PowerPoint kind of about the process, and then go through some of the changes that were made, that Kristen was referring to just now. I think that needs to be on record because it had to do with the budget for one of the applications. And then I can take Q&A if everyone's had a chance to read some of those applications or you have questions. So we can go from there. So I'm just going to start out with this very short PowerPoint. Basically that the funding competition, I don't know, Sarah and Barbara, if you follow the COC NOFO very closely, but it was released on July 5th. Shasta, because of the switchover, or NorCal, because of the switchover of the collaborative applicant and the lead agency, really didn't get going on this until mid-August. So we were about 6 weeks behind getting started on the process here. Part of what we had to do was the COC in general was required to notify all the project applicants whether their projects would be accepted and ranked on a priority listing. We did that after we held a rating and ranking committee. We only rated one project because the coordinated entry project and the HMIS project don't need to be rated, but we also did a ranking there. And Kristen notified everybody right after that meeting was over. We need to do a public posting and notification of the consolidated application. And we're going to do that when we get finished here today. That, if you have a motion to approve everything, then we'll go ahead and do the posting. And then the consolidated application and all of the renewals and the planning grant need to be submitted to HUD no later than this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. So it's a very, very short timeline. And then just a reminder that the executive board did vote on August 28th to focus only on project renewals and the DV bonus for this NOFO year. We didn't get any applicants for the DV bonus, but I would highly recommend trying to, get that set up for next year, because, typically what HUD says is the DV bonus is the easiest way to increase your annual renewal amount. So you want to do that to keep growing. I had shown that at one of the last meetings about what your ARD history had been, and how you had been missing funding kind of going along. So I would say start now to be ready for getting somebody in on that DV bonus, or even new project applications, going forward for the next year. For this year, though, basically what went forward were 3 renewal projects, all, contracted to Shasta County at this point, Shasta County Health and Human Services. And that's the Housing Partner Permanent Supportive Housing Money, the Core Homeless Management Information System, and Coordinated Entry. And HMIS, I don't know if Sarah and Barbara and Jesse, I'm sorry, the other Jerry have been around this, but they always recommend never to put your HMIS at the bottom of your ranking list, because if you lose it, you'll probably never get the funding for that again. That's just been a recommendation for years. So the committee ranked the Homeless Management Information System in rank number 2, and then Coordinated Entry was placed in rank 3, which leaves $5,712 in a risk factor. That's 7% of your ARD. They've been talking on some of the webinars lately that the past few years, they've been able to fund pretty deeply into tier 2. So there may not be a big risk of losing that money. But if you don't know, because this is a competitive process, if you do have to go, if they do not fund tier 2, you're going to look at another $5,712 to fund the coordinated entry. Your funding amount was $355,847. That was a correction this morning. I had $547 in there. Your total renewal projects equaled $361,559. So again, the $5,712 was placed into the 7% risk factor on the tier 2. And just so you know, annual planning grants are not rated, ranked, or prioritized. HMIS and coordinated entry are not rated, but they are ranked. So you do those in other ways. If you're going to look at coordinated entry or HMIS, you do those in other evaluation ways throughout the year. Okay, so any questions about this slide? You're good. And I can't see the other lady, Kristen, who's calling in on the phone. So.
Oh, there's somebody else?
There she is.
Got it.
Any question? That's okay. Any questions, Jerry?
No.
Okay. All right, great. And then just, I talked with Nicole about doing a little bit deeper debrief when this is over and people have more time to focus on kind of what I was seeing coming through the application. But I did see some strengths coming through. You're a lot stronger on coordinated entry over the past couple of years than you've been, and also the development of NCS or micro shelters. Kristen was able to identify 2 or 3 of those projects that are pretty new that weren't covered, in the last year's application. There's program growth and more inclusionary practices, including bringing the tribal entities into your meetings or having them have access. I know that we received a question from Chris Pitcher in August about getting one of the other tribes into the HMIS. So that's growing and that looks good. Plus you also have much more interaction with lived experience groups. And, we didn't get a letter, Kristen. I had to put up in the attachments that we were unable to obtain a letter for the Lived Experience Committee, but that's like a growth thing to look forward next year, is to have a definite committee of the COC comprised of folks with lived expertise. I did go over your system performance questions. I used HMIS data that was sent to me by the county, and I compared that to something I'll show you in just a minute. It is a set of Tableau charts. I don't know if you're familiar with the Durham project, but I did compare your system performance measures to what you did last year. That's really what HUD expects to see, is improvement in your system year over year. And so I looked at that. I also looked at how you compared to other COCs of similar sizes, and I kind of included that in the responses. And I just wanted to say too that whoever created the YouTube videos for how the services work, there's one on what a COC is like. There's one on coordinated entry or CES. Those were actually very helpful. And I thought those were really great for members of the public who really have a difficult time kind of grasping what a COC is supposed to do. For improvement areas, you lost rapid rehousing beds. And that was through the loss of some, you know, what I heard from the county was it was through the loss of ESG-CV funding. You did lose, I think, about 23 or 26% of your rapid rehousing beds. HUD does not like to see this. The data that they're seeing for improvement is coming through rapid rehousing, probably more than any other project. So I would recommend in the future, when you do apply for more state funding, to try and get some of those beds back, to try and recuperate some of those beds. And you'll see that in the application, in the collaborative application, you'll see what the beds were last year and the beds were this year. I think that's quite a few beds to lose in a single year period. They also had, you've also not done well on scoring in the past on street outreach services and your ability to have other agencies participate in the HMIS. So Kristen was able to help me really recognize a lot more street outreach services that were not included in prior year applications. So I'm hoping that that kind of gets you points back on that scale. And then the HMIS participating agencies, I did put a mention in there that Goodwill Rescue Mission was applying for state funding and would most likely be entering into the HMIS with all their beds. I think that raises the emergency shelter utilization rate from about 54% to over 89%, which HUD is looking for a base of 85%. And so next year, you'll probably get some points that way. I would say too, another area was there wasn't really a lot of evidence that you've done a racial equity study. HUD has a tool for this specifically. I put my own racial equity study together, and that's how I got some of the data points into the application. And the way I did that was I took the HMIS report that was provided by the county that was all programs regardless. And I looked at that compared to the PSH project that we rated. And I also looked at that according to census data, US census data for the county of Shasta. So I did a little bit of comparison on that. And then again, you have to increase the engagement of persons with lived experience. And so what we've done down here in Sonoma is develop a distinct lived experience person board. And they don't actually come in and vote with the COC, but they have separate meetings that are very safe. There's a whole bunch of guidance about how to create lived experience boards. So I would suggest looking at that as something to do for next year. So do you have any questions about this slide? Because that's really all I have there.
Okay.
Any questions, Barbara, Sarah, or Jerry? Okay, all right.
No,
So I'm
thank you
gonna,
for how you laid it out. That's really great. And
Yeah.
and identifying the improvement areas gives us definitely a target to move toward.
yeah. You know, I also reviewed your gap analysis that was done by Housing Tools, and you know, Nicole and I had chatted a little bit about that. And basically, in a lot of these strategic plans, I mean, I even see it down my way. In a lot of these strategic plans, they tell you what they're missing, but they don't tell you how to operationalize it. So what it's going to cost, what the resources are needed, and things like that. So that's another area for improvement you could look at next year, is just really taking that and that huge report and prioritizing those areas and figuring out how you're going to get that done. What funding sources can you do? You know, what makes sense given your geographic spread and all that kind of thing. So there's more, you know, there's more, but those were just like the things that popped out. So from there, I'm going to share again. I want to go over and show you, let's see, what the problems were that we corrected this morning. So if you look at the Housing Partners Grant, if you have that in front of you,
Well,
if you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna point out to people that it's the third document about 75 pages into the 200 and some pages.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the it's the separate one I sent later today, but now we have the third one that Teddy's gonna explain to us what the changes are. So what
Yeah,
page are
yeah.
we on?
So on the housing partners, let's go to page 35. And Nicole, this is the address that was wrong. It wasn't the one I mentioned. Where you see highlighted 1450 Court Street,
Yeah.
that is unable to be changed as of this morning. Even though we've moved these back from priority listing, this field is locked. And so I've had to send a support case to eSnaps that I hope gets in by 5 o'clock. You know, when we do this, we have to put these up on the web today. This is basically the address of where all the scattered site units are for the PSH project. I'm not too worried about this not being able to be changed because what it says here is you have to enter an address for all proposed existing properties for scattered site or units at multiple locations, enter the best address, right? So this is still a Reading address, and I think all of these units are probably in Reading somewhere or in the close perimeter. So I'm honestly not too worried about that. I mean, they're not going to really check that level of stuff. They're not going to put it on GIS or anything like that. So that was one.
I have a quick
And
question.
then,
Wait, we have
Uh-huh.
one.
So I have a question about that. This is Laura. I'm sitting in the corner. If those sites for like all those services, scattered sites are, 20 different clients, so it's 20 different addresses, what are we supposed to put in there?
well, it says, here, it goes for project applicants should enter where the majority of beds are located.
So
That's
city
weird.
of Reading
So,
address, probably okay.
Yeah, so that's why I'm not worried about that.
Okay.
Thank
Isn't
you.
that nuts?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if they want to know, they should just look at the HMIS inventory module for, all the addresses. It just, I don't know, some of these things just don't make a lot of sense. Okay, the next area then on this application, if you scroll down to page 44, this was the bigger change this morning, which was their summary budget. So originally, let me just back up and say that eSnaps has been a real problem for NorCal since you did the switch because of the fact that it's not truly a relational database and there's no kind of audit trail within the database. The eSnap support team were just back in the back end changing things all over the place. So there's like a lot of duplicated records in there right now. And when I was working with Melissa Nave from the county, who was wonderful, by the way, wonderful person to work with, she had put admin in all 3 of the renewal projects. And I went in Saturday and wiped the admin out because I had not seen admin in the 2022 projects. It turns out for the housing partners, I was looking at a copy of something that didn't have admin. So anyway, they did claim admin. I put it back in this morning. That bumped up the match amount to be 74,000. And Kristen has the match calculations that she can show you. So on this application, those were really the changes there. Just the 2 things. And I mean, that was totally fair to allow them to do that admin or to cancel them to put that back in. So Melissa signed off on this particular application this morning. Kristen, do people have this one in front of them or just version 2?
They would have version 2.
Okay. So this version will be posted on your website a little bit later today, but just to know that it is going to include admin. We took the admin out of the coordinated entry and the HMIS grant. So there's no admin in there. And then let's see, I think I need to stop share again. Let me go to the next project. And then in the HMIS project, we took the admin out. Let me share.
So on that one, what happened was because admin wasn't in 2022, she accidentally added it on Friday to both HMIS and coordinated entry. So Teddy and I were in the process, we took it out on Saturday. And then on Friday morning, we had to, go through each of the 3 to make sure where admin should really be. And we had 2 iterations. So, and we can talk more about how the match, I think you should probably address the match issue.
Yeah.
So that's just the wrinkles in that is that it was, multiple people doing this work because that's how it was set up, to have the county help enter in information into eSnaps based on their previous applications. And Melissa was brand new to it and jumped right in. And so we just had
Yeah, she did.
had these glitches that were all ironed out as of right now.
Okay, so on the HMIS grant, then, excuse me, if you go to page 29, right here on question 6, Melissa was a little bit questioning who's responsible for ensuring the HMIS implementation meets the privacy and security standards. Right now, today, and by the time we submit this grant, it's still going to be Shasta County. They are the HMIS lead of record until such time that you transfer the grant over. So that was just a little confusing to her because she, there's been changes in COC leads, there's been changes in collaborative applicants. So I just pointed this out that this one is fine. That's not going to change. And then on just on the summary budget too, let's see if I can get to that.
I have a question about that one. Shouldn't that be Health and Human Services, Shasta County Health and Human Services Agency?
Can you go back to that, Teddy?
Should be, but.
Maybe. Let's see.
What do we have?
Oh, yeah, it says Community Action Agency.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Sarah.
Oh,
Good.
okay. Good catch. Hold on. Okay. Okay, so Kristen, can you text me that? And if I can change that, because I've still got this open. This is not on the priority list either until we went through this meeting today. So if you send me exactly what that's supposed to say, I'll see if I can change that too before it goes up.
Okay.
And just again, going up means going up to your website. It doesn't mean going to HUD today. It'll go Thursday. When everybody else is screaming to get their work done on Thursday. And it's eSnaps was down from 3 to, I went to bed at 9:30 Saturday night. I couldn't get in at that time. Okay, so
I
then the
think it's
only other,
also maybe earlier in this
I know.
page 3 of the copy that I have. So just if you can
Okay.
search it, it might be other places.
Okay. Okay, search cap agency. Okay. And then the only other change we made to this grant over the weekend was I did pull the admin back out of here, and that brought the match amount down on this one. Okay, so that's that. And then the other one, can you see this one, or do I need to reshare? This is the coordinated entry app.
So that's
We
the
can
same
see it.
thing. That's the same name change we need.
Yeah, it
That's-
does. And that's the one that's locked, Kristen. So I'm just waiting to hear from tech support about doing that. Okay, so there's a name change here. And then again, if we go down to the summary budget, we pulled the admin out of that and brought the match down. So we took the 10% admin out of 2 projects. We put it back in 1 project. It's net positive. You're going to have to come up with a little bit more match, but at least these are accurate right now. So, okay, so that's that. I did want to also show you, in case you're curious. Now, did this screen change, Kristen, to like a website that says Tableau Public?
What?
What'd she say? What was that?
She was asking if we could see the website.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
We could see it, yes. It's
Okay,
not there
good. Let me go back to that then. This is just, I mean, I'm not going to go through these, but this is basically what I use to kind of compare your system performance measures to yourself. Now, I don't know if you know that HUD, ever since they started the system performance measures in 2015, they've always said, all we want you to do is improve your own system performance measures. And they don't produce anything like this, but this man from North Carolina does this. It's called, he calls it his comparator. And so for each of the system performance measures, there's little tiny tabs up here that say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7. Basically, what you can do is you can click your own COC, and you can click what the metric is that you want to measure. And you can either say similar size COCs, or I think like on some of these charts, you can actually say, I want to compare it to Napa, or I want to compare it to Lake, or I want to compare it to Humboldt. I just thought I'd show you that in case you haven't seen that. It's kind of fun to see, I think, where you compare. And he uses all federal data from the submissions every year to make these charts. So that was one of the things I used to kind of go over your system performance measures here. And
Can you send
gosh,
us out, can you send us out a link to that tool?
sure, yeah, you betcha.
You.
Okay, I'll send it to SPMs. Okay, and then honestly, I think that's really all I had to say, was other than entertaining questions about something else you might have seen in the application.
I'll just say great work and thank you for doing all of that
Oh,
at the last
hey,
minute. I know.
Sarah, it was a team effort. It was a team effort. I'll tell you that. Kristen and Nicole and Erica. And then I do have to give a lot of credit to Melissa Nave from the county. She just really, really jumped in there at the last minute and was so good to work with. Just very, very polite person. She had great questions. So yeah, I just want to give her credit for that. But thank you.
Well, that's, I will talk about a little bit. I appreciate catching all those name changes. As you can imagine, and if you printed it all out, and I printed it out on double-sided and it's still, deep.
Yeah.
A lot of boxes that you have to check, that you have to look through, and it is tedious. I appreciate that Teddy knows HUD speak. I really felt like at the end, through this process, there's just a way you have to communicate, and it's its own language, I think. So we're appreciative that we had someone with the expertise like Teddy. And I just want to touch on a couple things in general before we vote. And that is when we talked about the applications being in the name of the county for the renewal purposes. And that's because HUD said that you couldn't change things because it was too late. So the change for the HUD applications going forward would happen at some point after the applications are filed, and at some point when we work with HUD and we figure out what that transition looks like. So and if you really look, and when you look at the HUD applications, the 22 is this collaborative applicant and our new lead will be spending some in the time frame. We'll actually be spending money that actually came from 2022 fiscal year applications, because HUD works in the rear so far back and there are different time frames. And I can send a document that will show how each HUD application and what performance operation period, POP, and who is spending money from what source of HUD application. So this 23 application won't even be spent until sometime in 24. But we had to come up with a match that initially I heard about it late. So I would have discussed it at the last meeting, but we got kind of sidetracked on a lot of important financial conversations. So the match right now is total of $113,000, which the city has allowed us to use their HIP funds to make that match. So 7,500 of that is for the HMIS, 15,000 rather, is for the coordinated entry, and 16,497 is for the planning application. So originally all of that could be paid with match that we could consider the county's participation payments. But because I didn't get that approval from you last week, we couldn't shift it over. And without the timeline and needing this approval, we're still working on that, because we're going to work on all the financial information when we get more information back from the county. So that will all be shaken out, and then we can work with the city on reimbursing or replacing the match money. The $74,000 is needed for match for the Housing Partners 2 application. that is really a big, much bigger conversation that we have to have, but we couldn't have it in the time frame that we needed to have it to get this application filed. And that's because we don't know where that project's gonna land. We don't know what entity is willing to take it on. And then therefore we couldn't get a commitment on a match up front. So we're stuck with some logistical issues because of the short window of time to get all of this, these projects done and applied for. So thank you, somebody put that up there. I'm glad you showed that because the bottom share of the screen is showing what we just learned, because I don't know how many of you saw the HUD applications for last year, but they used HUD money in these 3 projects. HMIS, coordinated entry, and planning application. We've never seen that from the county explained to us, but it showed up in these applications. So when we get ready to account for how all these categories of funding are going to be allocated for all these purposes, we are now needing to set aside $30,608 that they claimed was used as match for fiscal year 2022 HUD applications. So we can't spend that somewhere else. We need to account for it in this way. So that's how I included it in both, in this worksheet for us going forward, to account for our match funds and account for project funding, because it then does go into potential funding that the next recipients of, or lead for HMIS, coordinated entry, and the planning money, some of that will be spent by this NorCal CSE going forward. And that's in a separate worksheet I'll share with you shortly in the future. Okay?
Kristen,
Okay, so
was that the COC HAP 3 or Shasta County, or do you know sort of what bucket of HAP money that came out of?
No, we were working so hard to get all of these documents ready that I think this will be part of our bigger HAP conversation with the county, as we had all those questions posed to us on Thursday. And then they are going to be responding to the state on how they have expended the HAP funds.
Okay.
When we're transferring the contracts. And just a FYI is on late Friday afternoon, the BCSH, a woman named Emily, sent the county, the city, and myself representing the NorCal COC an invitation to have a meeting about the transfer of the HAP contracts for this week, either Wednesday or Thursday. So we'll learn more about the timeline for getting more clarification. And of course, the county committed to us, they would have that information to us by October 13th.
I think that's really a good question, Kristen, that Sarah brought up, which because, on these state funds, there are COC controlled funds and county controlled funds in many of those funding buckets. So it will be important to find out, because all of the application, just in the descriptor, it just said HAP 3. It didn't say county allocation or COC allocation. It'll be important to find out which one they were planning on expending.
Are there any questions?
I'll stop that. Oh, let's talk one more time about the ranking. It was on the slide, but if I don't hear from HUD by about 3:30 today, I'm going to go ahead and push those renewals through the way they are. If I can't clean up the typos, it's just going to be the way it is. But the ranking again was in first position was Housing Partners 2, second was HMIS grant, and third was coordinated entry. So that's how your priority ranking is going to go up. And again, the planning grant does not get ranked.
Okay, so the way I understand it when we talked is we need to have a separate motions for 3. We're going to break it into 3 parts. One is we have to approve the first item, which is the priority listing, as a separate item. Is that right? And we'd rather
Yes.
approve than the collaborative application as a separate motion and approval.
Mhm.
Then the balance of the 4 documents we approve, the renewal projects and the planning application as one motion.
Mhm.
Okay? So if there aren't any more questions, I'd like to entertain a motion for the priority listing.
Well, this is Barbara, and again, I just wanted to also extend, kind of echo what Sarah said, that you guys have done an amazing job. This isn't easy, and I get that. And you guys made it look pretty easy. No.
Oh.
That being
Thank
said,
you. Thank you for that. It definitely wasn't easy, but it wasn't because of the narrative part. It was because of eSnaps, which I've told Scott Rich, I'll be in touch with somebody when we get this submitted to have a little chat.
yeah, I definitely. And I will just say before I make my motion, Friday, I worked for hours with Department of Healthcare Services on some portals and trying to get other grants approved. And the access was very challenging. But at this point, I would like to motion to approve the priority ranking that you shared.
Okay, could I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, I'll call for the votes here. Sarah,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Jerry.
Yes.
Okay, I'm a yes, so that's 4. All right, next we have approval of a motion to approve the collaborative application.
I'll make the motion to approve the collaborative application.
Okay, Sarah, could I have a second?
Yeah, this is Barbara. I'll second that.
Thank you. All right, voting, Sarah,
Yes.
Barbara? Barbara, we're voting. Oh, okay, and then Jerry.
Yes.
Thank you, and I am a yes. Okay, number 3 is a motion to approve 3 renewal projects, Housing Partners 2, 2023 renewal, HMIS 2023 renewals, Coordinated Entry 2023 renewal, and the 2023 planning application. Could I have a motion?
Yeah, this is Barbara. So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All right, voting now. Sarah,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Jerry,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay.
Who seconded that one?
Sarah did. Okay, now, the next item, is I aired last meeting when, we got into the conversation with the county about when they would have information to us. And I didn't look close enough at my monthly calendar to notice that it was the 19th of October is actually scheduled as an all member meeting. And not a executive board regular meeting. So I think one thing that we could do, which we've done before, is to reschedule the all member meeting to November and then make this the executive board regular meeting, because that's kind of an important meeting where we're going to receive valuable financial information from, we're expected to receive valuable information from the county. So that's my recommendation, is that we just switch it back over to being a regular meeting of the executive board, and we postpone the November. Let's look at the calendar for November because of Thanksgiving. What would that make it in November? Oh, it would make it the 16th, the Thursday before Thanksgiving. So that doesn't seem to be too bad. That would be the all member meeting instead. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and that's what we'll do. It's just, I want to be clear about that because of my, okay, so let's get a motion to approve October 19th as the executive board regular calendar meeting. And then we're going to move the full member meeting to November 16th.
So moved.
Okay, Sarah, and then a second.
I'll
this is
second
part-
that.
Go ahead, Jerry.
I'll second that.
Okay, great. Calling for the vote. Sarah,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Jerry,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay. And actually, whoa, in record time.
Great
we are-
job.
Well, thank you all, and thank you for taking
Yeah,
the time
thanks, everyone.
to join us. Well, we do have one more item, which is if you want to add discussion items for next meeting, I will suggest that I can provide additional information on how the changes will occur, like the logistical changes of the application funding, how that will lay out. Also, Barbara, last week you mentioned something about the governance charter, and I've been meaning to remind us that I didn't change the governance charter until after didn't plan to change it until after the applications were filed, because we can't change the governance charter saying who the HMIS lead is and the coordinated entry lead is until applications were filed. So some of those things we're just looking at a logistical timeline based on when the application gets filed. So we'll be working on that for the next meeting. We'll talk about the financial issues. We're fine tuning the funding that we've allocated from the HAP 3 money that the executive board approved last year and that we directed on November 11th, which just as a reminder, the executive board is the decision maker for the HAP 3 funds that were distributed from the state to the NorCal COC, that they were the applicant. And one thing I think we might start doing is start talking about HAP 4, because I will, if it's okay with you guys, I have, obviously it's available on the website, the total allocations as the state presented, and I shared that with us last 2 meetings. We can share it again and then start talking about how it could be distributed because each county gets a designated amount, and then they put the amount for the COC part of it in a lump amount. And last time you took that lump amount and you divided it per the 2019 point in time percentage of PIT. And so we need to have those conversations because the state is looking at entering into an original contract between the city and the state for HAP 4 money, and we want to get that flowing to the COC. And then we can talk also more about following up on the state and the county and the city and that transition for HAP 3. Any more? Okay. Wow. Well, you get an hour and 50 minutes back in your world. 50 minutes. 70 minutes. Can't do my math. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
At 2:48. Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks.